is a staghorn coral. Its scientific name is Acropora cervicornis. So you can see why it gets its name staghorn, because it looks like the antlers of a stag. So this used to be one of the primary reef building species here in Florida, but it actually died off over 90% because of a disease, and that was throughout the Caribbean that happened. So it's actually now on the federal endangered species list, and it's listed as a threatened species. So it's why we focus on this species, because it used to be so important to reefs here, and now there isn't very much of it left.
So your project is to grow.
Yeah.
How do you grow those animals?
Well, really, it's just a matter of knowing the animal very well. You have to know everything that it likes in its natural environment, and you have to provide that for it here in the tank. So I have to know the salinity is right of the water, the temperature is right, the pH is right, the calcium is right, and all those elements to the water quality that coral needs out in the ocean, I have to reproduce here in the tanks. And that's not only water quality, but also the lighting and the flow, the wave action that it gets. You have to sort of man-make all of that here in an aquarium in order for the coral to do as well here as it does in the ocean. But the really exciting thing is what we see here is that the corals actually do better in our tanks than they do in the ocean. They grow faster in our aquariums than they do in our offshore nurseries. So we're doing something right here and making them happy and grow very, very fast, which is great for a nursery because we can actually produce coral faster than we can in the ocean. So now we just have to make sure that that coral is going to survive and continue to do well once we put it back out at a restoration site. And that's the big question right now. We know we can grow it in the tanks, it does great. Now we need to know if we can actually use it for restoration and make sure that it does well back on the reef. This site, interestingly, was the biggest healthiest patch of staghorn coral in Broward County. And we had been monitoring that site here at Nova Southeastern, and we actually saw that this site completely died off of a disease around 2005. So what was at the site now is a big field of dead coral rubble, and that's it.
Well, what was the disease, by the way?
It was called white band disease.
White band
disease, yeah. And that's the same disease that affected these corals in the late 70s, early 80s that caused that huge loss throughout the Caribbean. But what you see with this coral is when you get a big patch like that, it tends to be all the same genetic individual, because it reproduces by fragmenting. So it has all the same genetic makeup in this big patch. So when it gets a disease, that's really bad for it, because if you're susceptible to a disease and there's 500 of you, then chances are if one of you gets the disease, all of you are going to get the disease. So what we've done at that restoration site is to put 30 different genotypes at the site. So they're all living mixed in with each other. It has great genetic diversity, and we're hoping that we'll see that some of those individuals are more resistant to disease, some of them may be more resistant to higher temperatures, and in that way you're building resiliency within that reef to the future stressors, and you would hope that the reef doesn't get completely wiped out by something in the future.